Right, welcome to John and Jane Talks Too. We've got a great event coming up. Really looking forward to speaking to some great panelists. I think, Jane, you're going to introduce our two excellent panelists today.
Yeah, thank you, John. And today's Jane and John Talks To is about the event industry and the impacts of COVID-19 and what we can do afterwards, how to look forward, and some tips and tricks. And if anybody joined the webinar a little bit early, you might have heard some that we've just been talking about. So we have got two friends with us today. We've got Adam Parry from Event Industry News. Adam's the editor of Event Industry News and will be able to tell us more about what his publication gets up to, as well as some awards as well, which is quite interesting, and they're doing that over there. And then we've got our friend Wallace Johnson, and Wallace is a former AVIXA board member, and both John and I have had the pleasure of working with Wallace in some shape or another over the past few years. And Wallace is an event industry veteran. And Wallace, you've got your own event company, WLJ Consulting, is that correct?
Yep. Business consulting group for the event space. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, you two. I'll hand over to John just to frame what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so welcome to both of you. Great to see you. I think of all of the areas of the industry that I'm hearing the most impact of the COVID-19 crisis is the events industry. So yeah, it really starts off with what does it look like now? What impact are you personally seeing? What impact are you seeing from companies that you talk to? I mean, Wallace, you're over there in Tampa, great place of the world to be stuck, I'm sure, but maybe not a great place to be sitting in the events industry at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere that's a good spot to be in the event industry right now. That's globally, but yeah, no, it's pretty quiet right now. Pretty quiet.
So what are you actually seeing? What are companies doing?
So right now, companies a lot of them have furloughed or had to lay off many of their employees, if not all, to go to just a single owner operation, or as Tom Stimson has called it, airplane mode. But there's several companies out there I've talked to that do have all their teams together. And right now, everybody's trying to make the pivot to virtual. It's the only environment. And it's not new to AV companies in the live event space, but how we've done it in the past, you have to expand on that now and try to incorporate all the other things you would do at an event into I'll call it, the term being used is virtual, I use digital, so for this reference, I'll use digital space, but take everything that happens at a face-to-face event, or the important parts, and transition that to virtual and to digital. And the interesting part is while AV companies are trying to figure it out, so are event planners. And so while the technology and all the tools are there, everybody is now trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to do it, especially if you're going to have people paying for it, and trying to get an ROI of event, not just do it for free, because there's still organizations that produce revenue generating events in that space. So that's where everybody's at right now. They're checking out the technology there, they're R&Ding it, and it's a slower process for many because, again, their employees aren't there. So the core people who would be doing this are not in the office, or not even in a remote standpoint to be doing it on company's time, let alone in the States, schools canceled. So you're dealing with work, you're working remote, you're dealing with homeschool. So there's just a lot going on, not only from the professional standpoint, but from the personal standpoint that a lot of people are transitioning.
So that's really interesting because I've been seeing so much virtualization, or as I'll have to call it now, what is digitalization of events, because that's everybody's pivoted, saying, right, that event I was going to be doing physically, I'll move to virtual. Adam, I know we've talked about we touched on this a bit before, but what challenges does that bring, or what opportunities does it bring?
It's a really interesting one, and I'm really glad Wallace framed it as digital rather than virtual, because I think they're two very different things, really. And online is a term that I'm seeing a lot more used, and I think that'll put the events industry instead really good going forward, because I think we'll see more of a hybrid approach to events rather than just physical or virtual, as people have called it. I think virtual has been one of those things that people have kind of cottoned onto and tried to frame it because of some of the technologies that were existing out there in the past. But I think what people are really looking to do, or the challenges that they're overcoming, is one, what does a physical event have, and how does that translate online? Sometimes speaker presentations don't necessarily translate the same online. The way that people engage definitely doesn't translate the same way online. A lot of the serendipitous kind of elements of an event that take place don't, outside in the networking area, maybe a few drinks after the event, kind of at a bar in one of the hotels or something like that, doesn't necessarily take place. But essentially, for event organizers to still put these things on, there needs to be some commercial aspects to it, whether that's around ticketing, sponsorship, etc. So the level of expectation, especially when somebody's paying for something, is in fact somewhat, with online events, even higher, because you have digital advertising which you can track, prove ROI. We're also competing in that space of, well, I want, let's say, £10,000 or dollars for my headline sponsorship for my virtual event. That's a lot of exposure when it comes to other digital means like Facebook, LinkedIn, pay-per-click, etc. So they're not the same. They're not. There's some very similarities with it, and there's some things that we can take from the digital world and position them as the way that digital and online events will prove ROI. But there's so much more to what an event is versus an online advert. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of the industry, especially from the organizer's point of view, is kind of wrapping their head around. They've been so used to selling the virtue of physical and meeting and connections and brand exposure and on all that kind of stuff at a physical event. And now they have to kind of position, well, you're not necessarily going to be able to shake hands with this person, but all the same values are still there. In terms of advantages, well, some of the advantages are that you can actually reach a hell of a lot more people. There's a sustainability pro to digital and online events. If you run an event in a particular way, you don't necessarily have to run it on a day, 2 days, 3 days. You could have it span over the course of a week, 2 weeks, even more. And I think that's one of the ways that online events will go, because to try and ask somebody for 8 hours a day of their time in front of a computer like this is a big ask, right? There's so much else going off. Whereas actually saying, oh, we're having a premiere of the keynote on Monday, and then there's going to be a networking thing on Tuesday. Maybe there's even going to be a quiz. I know you guys were talking about a quiz earlier. Maybe there's a quiz element, all that kind of stuff that's going to make things fun. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is people have not had the time afforded to them under normal circumstances, which means they would be able to research, develop, test, plan, and go out there with a polished product. It's people's livelihoods that are at stake, and they've been having weeks and days, if not hours, to some of these postponed or cancelled events where they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's almost like the hours thing, isn't it? We had a matter of hours to look at events that were coming up in a few weeks' time and look at what we were going to do with them, and a lot got cancelled and rearranged, rescheduled. So I'm just going to pick up on something you both said, which is, don't expect to just transfer it directly into a digital world and it's going to work. And you both mentioned ROI, but what are the skills that we need to either transfer, or what are the new skills we need to learn? Wallace, let me ask you first. You've obviously got experience in both. What skills would you advise people to go out and learn?
That's the scary part.
I like to ask the scary questions.
So this is the part that I think puts a little bit of fear in the traditional AV company, is that, we go out and we've bought line array systems and big projectors and all of this gear that is filled in warehouses that are, tens and thousands of square feet. And the reality is, to do a virtual conference at a decent scale, and I'll use the example of the NFL draft as a broadcast produced event, that you kind of just need a core team of what we've traditionally done with video switching and playback and audio management of mix minus feeds and basic laptop video conferencing skills. But reality is you can do a lot of these conferences without any of that. And you know, because, you know, you can have a great headset that plugs into your computer, a decent webcam that plugs into your computer or is already part of your computer, and you're ready to go. Like I have a bunch of different microphones over here. I got a USB lavalier mic that I can use right now. Pretty polished, nice background.
Showing off again.
Yeah, we were very, very envious of
showing off with your tech. Absolutely.
But I can give a keynote session. I was part of a digital event a couple of weeks ago, and you know, people registered. They had their agenda. They had an app, and to join the session, they clicked a button, and I cut on my webcam.
But what does it mean that you as a presenter, Wallace? You as a presenter, what do you do different?
Okay.
So not
as a presenter, I think you just have to get used to not having an audience to feed off of. So the rehearsal that, you know, especially me as a presenter, I rehearse a lot in my office or to my kids. So you don't have that feedback. You don't have that eyeball contact the way you would in the room. You don't sometimes get to feel the moment of the music as you walk on stage. So you just really got to have some kick-ass content to keep people's attention. You know, there's no room for BS. Good visuals, maybe change your presentation to make it more of a story and bring visuals and lead people through that journey so that they stay engaged, because they're strictly focused on you. They're not at a distance from the stage and the screen. Everybody's got the best seat in the house. So it's really going to be, you know, the presentation, the visuals, the words, the story that you're telling. So, you know, make it interactive, make it fun.
Okay, love it. And story is a good one. And storytelling, I think, is a real art as well, and it's a real skill. Adam, anything from you to add on to that? I think Wallace covered it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, and a lot of what Wallace says I absolutely agree with. I think from a presentation point of view, as presenters, especially for the event organizer, there's a hell of a lot more work for them to do. And actually, this is where I think AV companies can actually come into play and actually support organizers with that heavy lifting, because there are a lot of speakers out there that are not going to have the USB mic or the Lavalier mic. They're going to be kind of speaking directly at a laptop. They've probably not even got, you know, a half decent webcam to make them look half decent. So from a speaker point of view, which, you know, they're walking into a room at a live event where the pizzazz, the fanfare, the amazement is taken care of it for them by the event, right? And that actually also brings on a stark change of they've no longer got all of that to rely on. They've got to literally capture the attention of that audience. So, you know, there's a lot of work to be done there from that side. But I think that's actually where, you know, AV companies can come in and support event organizers with taking some of that workload off them. You know, maybe even sending kit out to these speakers that makes them, you know, look good and sound good, because that's really important, especially if you've got paying customers that are attending these events. So there's a little bit of work to be done there. I think looking forward, when some of the social distancing relaxes, you know, a couple of companies here in the UK I know are looking at setting studios up, professional fixed studios within their premises, because they've got the warehouse space, they've got the kit on site, and actually offering that out as a hybrid solution. So the actual event, it does take place physically, but the attendees tune in virtually. That increases the production value immensely, gives the organizer all the tools, bells and whistles that they want, the support of a really good team. And from a visual aspect, from the way that the actual audience engages with it, it's production, it's broadcast value then, right? It's like TV. In fact, Salesforce and a number of other kind of corporates have already gone down this route and produced really, really compelling, engaging content because of the way, you know, the NFL draft is a great example of what I expect actually a lot of companies to be offering going forward. Is like, don't hire the $100,000 venue, come to us and you can hire our, you know, part of our warehouse for 15 grand a day or something like that, with all this support and everything taken care of, and all the other stuff that probably a venue charges on top of you. If there's any venues listening to this, I do apologize, we've taken business away from you, but you know, 10 grand for connectivity and all that other stuff that kind of goes along with it. And then, even going on further than that, I think there's opportunities around, even thinking about the content differently. Does it need to have the face-to-face physical visuals like this? Could that content be produced as a podcast, high quality, studio setups, that kind of stuff, deliver really engaging content, use the networks that are already existing, just position and think about that event content slightly differently. That might be something that adds on to these other events or something like that. But
so we're moving here to the what's it going to look like in the future then.
Yeah,
this is great, and that's I think we've all agreed that the current situation, everybody's scrambling around to find what they can do now to survive, and that could be furloughing staff, it could be training staff up. There's a lot of things happening, but so what's it going to look like when we start getting to some form of new normal? And maybe not the next 3 months, which is going to 3 to 6 months, which is going to be a staged move, hopefully to that new normal. What is it going to look like after it? I'm thinking of big events like Infocom. Wallace and I spent a lot of time in board meetings together jointly talking about Infocoms of the future, and those were sacrosanct. But maybe, what are those events going to look like? Wallace, you're sitting in the middle of near Orlando, where some of the biggest events in America happen. What do you think that's going to look like this time next year?
I still, there's surveys that are going out, and there's surveys that have gone out in the past, because again, digital has not been, it's not a new conversation, and the industry has resisted it for a very long time. And hybrid will be the way forward, to where there's going to be a face-to-face component and a digital component. I've been interested to see how venues respond. I haven't heard much news about event design, right? So you have a ballroom that's 10,000 square feet that would traditionally fit 900 people. What is going to happen now? Is it only going to be 300 people in this big room because of, social distancing and spacing moving forward? Are we going to use traditional hotel chairs? Are we going to get to more of a custom furniture design to space people out and give them their own spacing and seating? So, in terms of looking forward, to Adam's point earlier on the remote broadcast, I think that's going to be the immediate opportunity. But I think companies are going to have to function a little differently in doing that. They're going to have to learn to partner, because of the keynotes in New York, but I'm the, producer supporting the conference and I'm in LA. Then I now have to find a New York-based company. I'm not just going to my sole AV provider to support that presenter. And if you have multiple presenters throughout the country for this conference, then it really is going to be a remote broadcast style event like the NFL draft, which I was super excited about to see, get pulled off, because in the event space, we usually look at sports and entertainment as the leading road. I tell everybody, if you go to NAB's 5 years ahead of Infocom, just in terms of the broadcast event technology shown there versus what we see at Infocom. And so to see that event put on broadcast remote, it now gives a template for event planners, event organizers to look at and say, oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh, that's what they mean. So right. I see the remote broadcast element of presenters being super important. Event design, I think, is just going to be totally different. I think it's smart for AV companies involved in meeting planning associations right now to get involved and get close to them to find out what venues are talking about from event design, be part of the solution and not wait to react to what they put out, because we're super smart people, we're solutionists, and we have good ideas too. So hopefully there's a collaborative element there, because I think the concern, even with a vaccine, is just going to be there a while, to where we're 2 to 3 years adjusting to what folks would call the new normal.
It feels like you're saying that we're definitely not going to go in this time next year to be back to where we were 6 weeks ago. No. It's going to be a hybrid, a mixed model that caters for different types of ways forward.
It will, and like in the particular area I think about is breakout rooms. From what I've seen in these digital conferencing apps, there's no need to do on-site breakout rooms anymore. Do them all remote. Because traditionally you go to a conference, you're trying to find a spot to work in between breakout rooms. The best session is oversold. You can't get in. It's already in a too small of a room anyway. It's just an awkward environment to have.
So breakout rooms, do you mean the bar? Sorry, I thought you meant
No,
you still want to do that
networking.
physically.
That's
Adam,
where all the
you
best
see,
content happens anyway.
Adam, what do you see the future? So where do you see this being in 6 to 10 years?
Exactly that, where nobody actually goes to the main event, everybody just hangs around in the vicinity and then goes to the bar afterwards. No, in all seriousness, like you mentioned Infocom, like major pinnacle events in every industry, which every industry has their own pinnacle event. You know, those events bring the whole industry, or as much of the industry, together. Are we going to see those disappear? Absolutely not. You know, they're there for a reason. They've grown to the point of being that size for a reason. But that said, each year there will still be a huge number of people that can't make it to those events. You know, it might be they've got work on, logistic issues, their wife might be pregnant. You know, there's so many things that go into people not turning up to an event. We have an event here in the UK and we do pretty well. We only have about a 40% drop off, but an industry standard is 50% for a free event, and even ticketed events still have drop off. So what could this mean? It could actually mean that actually for events, there's more eyeballs on them and more people around them and wrapped around them. We just might not have them to capacity as we have seen 6 weeks ago or over the last kind of year, 18 months. But what I do think that also provides a platform for going forward is two things. One is an exponential growth of events, because more eyeballs, more people being involved. There's going to be an appetite there to attend events because they're going to feel part of it. If you look at esports has been born out of a digital world now into physical events, which are huge business, huge marketing dollars around them because of the amount of eyeballs that are there. Not only that, I think it also presents an opportunity for creative people to get clever with events. But before they go out there and risk it all on a venue and marketing and trying to pull an audience from around the world together on what they have a hunch as a good idea for an event, they could use virtual or hybrid as a way to bridge that and limit the risk. And actually that presents a great opportunity for the industry to be a little bit more stable in terms of making sure people don't run away with money or go pop on you at the last minute, or, you know, even present the opportunity to get some of those invoices in a lot earlier to make sure that as a supplier, you're much more confident that that event's going to be going ahead and you're not going to be left holding the check, right? So I think there's a huge amounts of opportunities. Like Wallace said, I think initially there's just going to have to be some social, you know, acceptance that things are going to be different. The event's going to look different. Maybe events are actually bigger, but that's because people are spread out more a little bit. Maybe there's even some social restrictions around this is a 3-day event, but you can actually only attend 1 day. And you attend on the day that you're given or scheduled, and this is how it works. So, which would be a crying shame, because some of the greatest things come from spending 3 days at an event and, you know, connecting up with different people at different times and doing stuff. So they're all hype, you know, kind of possibilities at the moment. We'll have to see, but I think there's definitely some of that on the cards. That's what I'm hearing from organizers and suppliers and stuff that are chatting about when they're getting ready to restart.
I'm really interested in what you said about the esports. It's not something I've ever really got into. Or
you just don't like esports.
But I'd love to know. I mean, I know that there's, you know, it's millions and millions of people watch that every day.
Yeah. If you take, I don't know who will have heard of this particular game, but one company owns a platform called Modern Warfare. Their most recent game has had 50 million players online, unique players, right? This is not just people keep playing. This is unique people, 50 million, and it's not that old. It's a few months old.
Wow.
And that's not even a big game, right? And some of the money that teams are paying to get into the leagues are in excess of 20 million. That shows you how much, to play. Not even like to win, to play. 20 million. And these esports teams are backed up by crazy powerful companies with lots and lots of money, but they understand the value of bringing those people face to face. They understand the value of fans and bringing those into, and what that can mean for revenue and driving. So they've got great platforms that exist that connect people up around the world, and then they're launching, competitive events on, fan engagement events off the back of them. Brands are going, right, yep, marketing dollars, here you go. Coca-Cola, boom, here you go, here's my money, gambling is huge esports. And we don't really think about gambling as esports, but it is. It's electronic sports and betting and things like that. So that kind of way of thinking of how some of that digital online stuff might translate into physical events is a really exciting prospect for me, with virtual being the bridge.
And ROI, obviously that translates quite nicely into ROI. I'm just going to pause and say to our listeners, if you've got any questions for anybody here, then just pop it in the Q&A channel at the bottom of your screen. We've got some time at the end of the webinar, and we'd love to have your questions to answer as well. So just put your questions in there. So Wallace, I just saw you nodding away on that revelation to me that 50 million people would actually sit and game in teams together. Have you got any experience in that world, and what can we learn from that, and what can we translate into what we do?
The only experience I have in the esports world is a couple of kids in my neighborhood on amateur teams trying to get into leagues. And so with this downtime, I've have them helping in the yard and around the house. And I said, how many hours are you actually playing a day? And they're generally at least 8 to 12 hours a day. And it's serious. But esports, I mean, look, ESPN just aired a Madden championship between Hollywood Brown and Snoop Dogg, because that's the only sports we have right now. And Madden has been around. John Madden football game has been around for a long time. I grew up playing it online, and it's addictive, and it's extremely competitive. So from a sports aspect, it has everything in the making, minus the known jerseys and players, but that's what.
How do we translate into our world, though? What's the learnings? Because there must be some stuff. I mean, I think it's fascinating.
The learnings is what we touched on earlier, is the reach, is that, from a face-to-face conference, you could sell tickets at $500 a seat and get 1,000 people, but why not sell it for $50 a seat and get 50,000 people who want to attend? Because I'll sign up for a conference if it's a decent price, and I won't even watch it live because I don't have the time and day to stop and sit there and watch it, but I'll watch it on demand at night or after hours. And that's the value I think that people can learn from the esports aspect, especially from a marketing aspect too. Like a lot of people, from a trade show perspective, say, oh, well, it's not physical, it's not face-to-face, I don't get those appointments. I think that's where our industry has to learn how to connect those dots, because the reach is far greater than anything they would see face-to-face. It's got longevity. You can have content up forever. And that's the lesson learned, I think, from esports is hugely critical.
So one of the things I'm fascinated, it's interesting because we're talking about big events here, but what real fascinating conversation I had with you the other day, Wallace, was about, let's bring it right down to small companies where maybe, efficiency is going to be important. There's going to be cash constraints. They're used to spending money on talking to either their teams or the company or wider groups of people. And you had a great take on what might be one of the directions that they start to look at going forward using the platforms that they've already got.
Yeah, that's one of the threats, I say, in terms of the scary part and skills needed for AV companies, is because, we've seen this, evolution of digital evolve pretty quick. It's accelerated really fast. And, we're sitting here on Zoom right now, collaborating and talking to an audience of people. And these tools are very inexpensive. And so, I think smaller companies have adapted to that. Grandma's using it. My 7-year-olds are using it for school. So between solutions like Zoom, Teams is one that's on fire right now. And just in terms of, it was heavily used in the NFL draft from back-end operations of communicating amongst teams and personnel, while sitting there live on TV. And I know Microsoft is working on, improving their live event portion of that platform. And it's something that companies are most likely already paying for if they're using the office infrastructure from a business tool standpoint. And so as people start to evolve and understand, okay, we're working remote, when things loosen up, we don't need to bring everybody back. I think even the NFL found that out. That was one of the big takeaways from the coaches was, hey, I don't have to be in the office all the time to get quality work done. I can actually be at home and be around my kids and use these collaboration tools and still be fairly efficient in doing my job. Can I transition everything and work remote? No. And I think that's, understandably in the business place, there's jobs that are going to have to go back into the workforce. But I think this definitely opens the eyes of companies throughout that how they work is going to have to be different. How they plan is going to have to be different. How they coordinate is going to have to be different. Especially if you're looking at, remote presenters and partnering with different companies, that communication infrastructure is going to have to move beyond email. And I think this whole process has accelerated adjusting to that.
So you think something like Teams will become the way people communicate more widely, broadcast to their company and beyond, just using the platform they've got because they feel more comfortable in doing it, because they've been doing it a lot now over the last few weeks.
They have, and Teams, like I say, the one cool thing about Zoom, I think everybody enjoys, is the 49 windows. I think you can get to a single screen, and then being able to see more faces. And Teams is doing some updates with that. I think they're looking to move from 4 to 9, and then they're still looking to improve that number. But yeah, I definitely think companies will look to use the internal tools that they have more often to reach employees and staff and customers the same way they have been over these couple of months ahead and past. And like I say, Teams is going to have an event function to it, to where they can essentially stream or webinar mode out to their attendees. And with the chat and interactivity that they have already in the platform, you just don't have to go far for an internal event to do mass communication.
Excellent. No, really good. I mean, I think that kind of takes us from one end to the other. We've had 50 million people on an esport game, all the way to small companies having to be very agile and use what they've got because they're A, through a necessity of cost, but B, most probably they're used to doing it now. It's a really good spectrum from an end-to-end situation. Jane, have we got any questions that people are asking us?
Yeah, we have actually. Yeah, let me just ask you both a couple of questions. So you talked to us about partnering. So we've got a question in about how do we partner, and obviously this is from an AV company. How do we partner with an events company? How do we find them? Where do we look? So Adam, is that something you can help us with?
Oh, cool. No, I mean, the events companies are going to be at events. So that's one of the good things. We've got, as an events industry, we have a lot of event industry events. So that's one great place to go and hunt those people out when we can start coming back. But industry publications are another one. There's top lists of agencies. They're great companies to look at partnering with because they have multi-roster clients and things like that. So by one friendship, partnership with one agency, you can obviously work with them internationally, but also to all of their customers and clients and events as well. But industry publications like Event Industry News are great resources, and others to kind of find the names of people that you need to speak to, more importantly.
Isn't there a joining up factor, Adam? Because I mean, I just know we're a distributor. So at Maverick, we're a distributor, and we tend to be, we're also kind of this partnering agency as well, because we see both sides. I mean, I don't see as much of that in distribution. Is there anything like that where people can go to and say, yeah, actually, I know you're a perfect partner because I see somebody else who's already doing it really well?
It's an interesting one. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I will do some research post this and come back to you, which you can obviously then distribute to people. There probably is, more than likely, there will be individuals or companies set up to help that bridging of two people that should be working together. None come to mind this moment, but I'll happily look into that and come back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity. So like there's two AV groups of companies that I think have a structure, agreements, alignment from a number of different things, from a business standard, technical abilities, and things like that. The Rental and Staging Network in the States and the AV Alliance that's global. And looking at organizations like that have companies from either around the States or from around the world. If an event company went to that type of environment and said, I have an event in these cities and you need to partner with various companies in those cities, that could be a good avenue, an environment that's already organized. But outside of those two, from an individual company standpoint, there's not a lot of unique partnerships spread out to
Well, the only other one is Avixa, of course. Wallace. We can, maybe that's the route to look at. I mean, that's, maybe we could talk, talking of the industry association, which straddles all of these areas, as a possibility there. So I think, if Adam, you're taking the job of looking locally, I'll look internally at the AVIXA organisation.
If I might add to one thing there, John, once Wallace started speaking, there is an individual who I think is possibly, I'm not sure, but possibly a good example of a company that is working with lots of big companies all around the world. A gentleman called Will Curran from Endless Entertainment actually used to be an AV supplier, so hardware, warehouses, all that kind of stuff. He changed his business model to actually work more on the end of his talent is within his team, and therefore he goes out based on wherever the region is the client wants to deliver the event and sources locally. So rather than have logistic costs and maybe even not being able to supply because of that, he then works with individual AV companies around the globe to bring that together. So his team with kit bring in, and then obviously maybe subs in extra staff and people from that AV company that he's working with, and that's his format. So Will's one, maybe there are lots of other Wills.
There's a number of potential avenues we can look at then. Great. Jane, is there any other questions?
Yes, there is. So there's another couple that have come in, but the one person said we're talking a lot about large events. What about the smaller events? What can we do? Smaller events, maybe more regionally located or even internally. Have you got any hints and tips on what to do there?
Yeah, with smaller events, and I was alluding to this a little earlier. So the event app platforms that manage the registration, agenda, ticketing, when you go to a website and you see an event, there's a tool behind that that's putting all that together. A lot of these event apps are now incorporating the digital aspect to it. So when you get to your agenda and you see your session, you're clicking a button that says, join the broadcast. And so now you can see whether that meeting is maybe a Teams meeting with a link, it could be a Zoom meeting with a link. And then some of these tools are building in their own video tools and chat and polling inside of it. I see that being very popular for smaller meetings. And again, I alluded to the breakout room, not needing to meet face-to-face afterwards. But if you have a smaller meeting that, you want to organize and do, these apps are working great. And like I said, I was part of a conference with one presenting through one of those apps, and there was no AV people. We didn't need any specialists. There was no, unique skills. That's the scary part. It was just that easy. So Cvent, Visible, Pathable, Socio, a couple of that, I've looked into that are really good and like I say, kind of scary with how easy they've made it to manage a small meeting in a simple way remotely.
We'll still need you, Wallace. We still need AV people.
Yeah, you need me as a producer.
Yeah, there you go.
Jane?
I was going to say that is really interesting because we've been looking at some virtual platforms as well very recently.
And Jane's actually on one on Wednesday. You have to do an announcement. No, you'd be too bashful, but you're involved in the rave launch of a particular platform, which I know has got, getting close to 10,000 people over the week joining it. It's interesting because they're doing it in sliceable chunks as well, including Jane running a panel on Wednesday evening, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. UK time. Yeah. Adam, anything to add to Wallace's? Because it's technology. We all love technology, and I know you do awards on technology as well.
Yeah, I do. Very briefly, I would actually say that one of the biggest opportunities I think AV companies and the people within their companies have is actually to be the provider of all of that technology that Wallace just said to that event and organizer. One, cost per acquisition on a one-to-one basis with some of these companies can be really, really high. There's no economies of scale, you're having to learn new systems, and there's nobody there to support you technically other than that company. So there's that. Nobody's looking at how that fits together with on-site AV and technology there as well. And I keep seeing pop up with larger companies where they've got the money to facilitate this, the role of the event technologist. Now you've got registration, live streaming, Wi-Fi. You've got all of these things now that event technology means. I mean, it used to mean AV, didn't it? Event technology used to mean AV. Yep. So why not all those companies with all those technical skills interested in technology work with the technology providers to buy that in-house and be that provider and support and networking to the event organizers organisers. I don't think for a second event organisers got huge amounts of interest in learning about all these different technologies and how they may play a role. What they want to do is they want to buy a service in a box. People turn up and take care of them because they're busy looking after their clients and customers and ticket holders and things like that. So I think that's one thing I think is an opportunity, is to kind of bridge that gap. Second to that, talking about getting back as an opportunity, getting back as soon as we can, is companies working with existing event venues, but also spaces that don't necessarily see themselves as event venues, to set up event spaces that are turnkey solution. So this is quick turnaround, this is out of the box setups, this is your stage, this is your seating setup, this is how the event looks, because event venues tend to have huge gaps in their availability because of build and break. You know, it takes a long time to build it, and there's also cost prohibited with that as well. So smaller events want to walk into somewhere, have a full setup where their attendees can come in, they can change the graphics on the screens, they can make it look and feel like their event, and then walk out. And I think if AV partners want to look at non-traditional AV venues that have got space, this could be a great opportunity to be able to increase capacity so people can get back to events quicker at a much more cost-effective rate. Some of the venue hire costs I'm seeing for the second half are eye-watering. We're talking double the cost, and that's on top of an extreme, if we can come back in the second half of the year, an extremely busy period. So that's going to carve out all of these smaller mid-sized organisers that just can't practically afford that. No. And I think there's an opportunity to go, okay, you've got a huge warehouse, you're not an event venue, but we can come in, set everything up for an AV, do 3 or 4 weeks worth of venue hire, and a smaller medium-sized event organisers just can come in and go bang, 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 bang.
It's sounding really positive. I mean, I know we're getting to the end now, but I mean, I suppose my takeaway here is I think I walked into this thinking the events company is doom and gloom. I mean, my son works for an events company, so he's been on furlough, and actually that events company, they do light lit balloons that light up, and they use those, and you must probably know them well, Adam. They've been making face masks because they work in materials, so they've been actually pivoting to their business massively. My son likes being on furlough though, because he can just play PlayStation. But but I mean, I've come out feeling far more positive than I thought. You know, you're talking about, I love the idea of hybrid events. I'm taking away the fact that actually, if you look fast forward a year, something like Infocom, instead of having 80,000 people at ISE or 50,000+ at Infocom, could actually be touching hundreds of thousands of people, but in a different way. And that is so positive. Actually, a lot of these things I'm doing, a lot of the conversations we have, I do believe that as a human race, we all want to be positive. And I think, I do believe we'll make some good things happen through this crisis. And I think a lot of things that we were trying to do seem to have accelerated. And Wallace, the whole idea of Teams broadcast, more often talking to more people electronically or digitally, not virtually. It's fantastic. I mean, Jane, what are you taking away from this 40 minutes?
Yeah, event technologists. I think that's just such a fabulous term that we can, perhaps use that term in AV industry, create studios, create mini events, do more of them, ROI. I think like you, we are glass half full people, obviously, after all, but I think there is a lot light there to be gained. So really appreciate your time, both of you. Thank you very much. I learned a lot.
I think we're recording this, Jane, aren't we? So this recording will go to everybody who's on it and anybody who watches it afterwards that couldn't make it this time.
I think it's very valuable. So I appreciate everybody's time. And thanks very much for the questions that everybody put in. They were great questions to the panel. And if you've got any more, please reach out to us after this webinar and we will do our best to get back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam and Wallace. Great to talk to you.
Thanks
everyone. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye.